All right, and we are live again. We are back once again. We took a week off, but we came back like we promised. We're back in the building. We want to thank y'all for tuning in. Y'all could have been anywhere else in the world, but y'all choose to visit us. Thank y'all for coming. All right, I am your co-host Deante.
And I'm Shekema.
And we are the Dunlaps.
We're the Dunlaps.
Yes, we are. Welcome back. Thank y'all for tuning in. We're going to kick this thing off in traditional fashion. We're going to start off with history, what got us to where we are today. And we're going to kick it off in traditional fashion, my love, and let you start off with the social injustice today in history.
Okay, thank you, babe. And so today's, so what we're going to do is two today. I'm going to do yesterday's and today. And these are all brought to us courtesy of the Equal Justice Initiative. And we are not sponsored by this organization, but we really dig what they do. And so I love to bring to you each week at least one or two facts from their Equal Justice calendar. And so yesterday's fact is from Texas. So this was why I chose to present it today. June, what month? I'm talking about January. Gather yourself, ma'am. Gather yourself. Okay. June 5th, which is yesterday, 1910, a white mob kills two Black men walking home in Texas. And so this took place in Orange County, Texas. So on June 5th, 1910, a white mob lynched Douglas Lemon and Rankin Moore, two Black men, as they were walking home from a community festival in Orange County, Texas. In the days leading up to the lynchings, white mobs targeted and terrorized the Black community in Orange County, furious that a jury had recently failed to convict a Black man named Jack White of killing a white man. In addition to lynching Mr. Lemon and Mr. Moore, the white mob shot into the Black district of town and fired at other Black men who managed to survive. No one was ever held accountable. Mr. Moore was walking home from a festival with two other Black men whose names were not recorded in the newspapers when a mob of white men approached them on Orange Avenue, in a section of town where many Black residents lived. Without saying anything, the white mob opened fire on these three Black men, hitting Mr. Moore repeatedly with bullets and killing him instantly. Several white men fired at his two companions, both of them who managed to momentarily escape the mob. Another Black man, Mr. Lemon, later was found shot to death on a side street nearby, almost certainly another target of this white mob. The mob left Mr. Lemon's body in the street until the next morning. In the weeks prior, white mobs targeted and terrorized the Black community in Orange County. Newspapers reported that this violence began because a jury failed to convict a different Black man, Jack White, of killing a white man. Terroristic violence in the Black community was common during this period when white mobs used widespread, unchecked racial violence to instill fear in the entire Black community and discourage organized opposition to persuasive Jim Crow laws and other forms of racial oppression. This brutal violence was often unpredictable and arbitrary. Countless Black people, like Mr. Moore and Mr. Lemon, were victims of racial terror lynchings, not because they were accused of any crime, but simply because they were Black and present when the lynch mob chose to act and could not locate its intended victim. No one was ever held accountable for the lynchings of Douglas Lemon and Rankin, who were two of at least five documented victims of racial terror lynching in Orange County, Texas, between 1877 and 1950. That was the first one yesterday.
Well, let's go ahead and get the other one on.
Just straight no chaser, huh?
Straight no chaser.
All right.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, because at this point, like, what can you do? What can you do? All right, so today, here's another one. June 6, 1966. James Meredith shot by a white man during March Against Fear in Mississippi. On June 5th, 1966, equipped with only a helmet and walking stick, James Meredith began a 220-mile march against fear from Memphis, Tennessee to Jackson, Mississippi. Mr. Meredith, an activist who had integrated the University in Mississippi 4 years earlier, organized a one-man march to encourage African Americans in Mississippi to register to vote and to challenge the culture of fear perpetuated by white supremacists in the state. Mr. Meredith crossed the Mississippi border on the morning of June 6, 1966, accompanied by a handful of friends and supporters. State police and FBI agents monitored the march while reporters and photographers trailed behind. A few miles south of Hernando, Mississippi, Aubrey Norville, a white salesman, ambushed Mr. Meredith from the woods and shot him in the neck, head, and back. Before he started shooting, Mr. Norville warned bystanders to disperse and twice shouted out Mr. Meredith's name from the woods, but law enforcement did nothing to protect Mr. Meredith. He survived his injuries, but was unable to immediately continue the march. Enraged by the attack, civil rights leaders organized to continue the march to Jackson in Mr. Meredith's place. On June 26, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Stokely Carmichael, and Floyd McKissick were among the thousands of marchers who completed the trip after weathering harassment and physical abuse from angry mobs and law enforcement alike. Mr. Meredith rejoined the march shortly before it reached Jackson and led a rally at the state capitol. In November 1966, Aubrey Norville pleaded guilty to assault and battery and was sentenced to 2 years in prison.
Well, I'm of the mindset at this point of looking at it like this. And I've said it before, if you don't know your history, it has the chance to happen again. If you don't highlight these things and we become numb and don't care about them, it's easy for stuff like this to happen again. The point is not to rehash the past for the sake of rehashing the past. The point of discussing these things is so this stuff doesn't happen again.
Right.
Because if you don't know about it, you won't recognize the signs when it starts to happen again, because everything starts from something that snowballs into something else.
Mm-hmm.
And if you choose to ignore it, it can very well happen again. And when you have a populace that frankly doesn't care until it's on their doorstep, they won't do the history to see what's actually happened before. And when you have an understanding of what can happen, you can prevent what can happen, right? Because if it can happen once, it can happen again if you're not careful. And so when I think about these things and how we bring them to our audience, it's from a light of understanding.
Right.
And it's from a perspective of empathy, but also humility. It's when you say it can never happen to me, it's when it happens. And it shouldn't have to be on your doorstep in order for it to matter. Right. Especially when we're talking about people's lives, when we're talking about injustice against, a certain subset of people. And regardless of who it is. And if you, like I said, if you don't believe or if you don't understand that people can be cruel, that people can be bigoted and barbaric, you will let certain things pass until it's too late. And so when I think of these things, I look at it from a perspective of, okay, my eyes are open.
Mm-hmm.
I understand what has happened. And it's like they say, an ounce of prevention, right?
Right.
Equals a pound of cure. And when you see that, when you see the signs, you can cut it off at the pass. Like, well, that's not cool. That's not okay. Or this seems like, this appears to be something familiar. But again, if you don't care, if you're so far gone thinking that this is the past, this is 2023, stuff like that won't happen. Because it kills me when people say it's 2023. It's like, and just because it's 2023, it's the idea that you've grown past it that leaves you vulnerable to it. If you're not educated in that space or have that understanding, anything can sneak up on you. So when I listen to these things, it just reminds me to stay sharp. It reminds me to don't ignore what's obvious. And again, like they say, if you want to hide something from people, put it in a book, and it's written down. So it's historical fact. And if you don't understand its history, it can repeat itself. It don't have to repeat itself in the same exact play of events, but it can happen at a different place at a different time to a different group of people, or to the same group of people, or to,
Right.
And so again, it's awareness, it's understanding, and it's to say, okay, this stuff has happened, and if you're not aware enough, it can happen again. And the point is to not repeat the same mistakes, not repeat the same atrocities. That's the idea of evolution in my mind. That's the idea of growth and advancement in my mind. And so it's
And
it's insane.
the
Well,
spirit,
to
the
hear
spirit
about
of
it.
the age, though, the spirit of the age that caused those things is alive and well. I think people are a little bit more, I don't even want to say reserved. I think people are a little bit more cautious about the things they say and do because social media.
Right. It's public now.
And, they know like one thing wrong, and next thing you know, they're going to be making videos talking about you about to lose your job. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Everything is subject to the court of public opinion now.
people have to be more cautious now when they do that stuff. But I do think though that they're the same people who took postcards of the stuff. So it's kind of like hard to like say whether or not there was any shame involved in that. Like they wanted people to know that they were participated in that stuff. But there's always, this idea about the Klan that like we put these hoods on because we're more empowered to do things when we move in stealth and secrecy. But I just think sometimes I feel as if people say, well, it's 2023 because that's a form of gaslight. Like, it's 2023, and obviously we should be better in 2023 than we were in 1953. But let's be real. We're not.
Right.
And I do think sometimes when people say it's 2023, like, stop pulling the race card. It's 2023. And I'm like, y'all are even more empowered than your ancestors were. I don't even know how to describe it, but the insidiousness, that spirit, that demonic spirit that allowed for racism and chattel slavery and lynchings and mob violence and like literally running people out of town and stealing their property, like bombing churches with 4 little girls in them. Like that's still alive and well in this country. It's very much alive and well in this country. What you got for technology, babe?
Well, on a different note, we're gonna take a quick pivot to the technology aspect. This information and content comes from This Day in Tech History. Again, we are not affiliated with these with these businesses, with these websites, but we do enjoy their content and think that is really great information for educational purposes. So we are not sponsored or affiliated with these websites in any way, shape, or form. Anyway, on to the information. So we're going back to the 80s, 1984 to be exact. June 6th, 1984. Alexei, I'm pretty sure I'm about to butcher this brother's last name.
Take your time, baby. Do your best.
His name is Alexei Pajitnov. Now, this is obviously a Russian gentleman, but Patinov releases the game Tetris in the USSR.
What?
Tetris will become one of the most popular puzzle video games of all time. I remember I had it on Game Boy.
Tetris.
That's why I got a Game Boy, was to play Tetris. But anyway, originally programmed for a Soviet-built Electronica 60 computer, the game was soon ported to the IBM PC, where it spread quickly throughout Moscow and the rest of the USSR. Eventually making its way to Hungary. From there, the game was discovered, and questionable attempts to license it for sale by various software companies were made. By 1989, half a dozen different companies claimed rights to create and distribute the Tetris software for home computers, game consoles, and handheld systems. Several highly complex and drawn-out legal battles ensued in the following years to settle who had the rightful licenses and authority to sell the Tetris game in various formats and countries around the world. Ironically, Pajitnov himself was not able to make any money on Tetris for years because as an employee of the Soviet government, the Soviet state ended up owning the rights. It was only when the rights reverted from the old Soviet government to Pajitnov, and he moved to the US in 1996, that he was able to form a company and collect royalties. Then he went on to work for Microsoft, trading one oppressive regime for another, it would seem. Interesting.
Right.
So Tetris was born.
Wow.
That was some pretty complex stuff for a video game, but
yeah.
But again, rules is rules.
Nothing is as it seems,
Nothing is as it seems.
Especially when you're the end user, you don't care about all that.
You're just playing Tetris. Never really knew the struggles it was to get that game to you, and how many people and how many other organizations wanted their hands on that game.
Wow.
And I look in the App Store and all of the different Tetris derivatives that are out there today. That game set the stage for puzzle games for a very long time. It set the standard. So it's still one of my favorite games. I won't lie.
I remember playing it on the Game Boy.
Yep, that's why I got a Game Boy, because I wanted to play Tetris.
That's crazy.
All right, one more.
Let's go.
All right, so last one. This one was going into the 2000s. June 6th.
In the 2000s.
June 6th, 2005. The Mac gets Intel inside. In a keynote address at Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, Steve Jobs announces that Macintosh computers will transition from PowerPC to Intel processors, and demonstrates Mac OS running on a computer with an Intel Pentium 4 processor. Jobs revealed at the time that Apple had been secretly preparing for a possible transition to Intel for many years. Unbeknownst to the public, for every Mac OS X released, Apple actually had prepared a version running on an Intel processor. By making the transition to Intel, Apple paved the way for the resurgence of the Macintosh computer by making it more compatible with software from Microsoft Windows. The Mac gets Intel inside, so they can spread their consumer markets.
That's crazy. I'm looking at my computer right now, talking about Intel Core.
Exactly.
Wow.
So that's today in technology history. So
those are both huge.
Yep. Absolutely.
You got to find us a way to play Tetris.
I think I have a version of Tetris on my PlayStation.
I would like that. I would like that very much.
I think I got it on one of my PlayStations. I can't remember which one, but I'm pretty sure I have a copy of the game.
Wow. Okay. You had important stuff today.
Yeah. We always come up with some good jewels to drop.
Yeah.
Some, reminders of where we come from to where we are.
That's it.
That's the whole point, right? If you don't know your history, you're doing the repeated, or you're doing the miss out on it, depending on how you go at it. The bad stuff seems to repeat itself. The good stuff seems to get overlooked if you don't know your history. If you don't know what you're capable of, either good or bad. Right. You know, the good, like I said, the good stuff gets overlooked. The bad stuff seems to just always find its way back, but the good stuff seems to get forgotten about. So, you know, so, but, you know,
Absolutely.
we want to, you know, put some of this good stuff on repeat and get some of this bad stuff out of rotation. That's the
You
game we
know,
playing.
we talk a lot about, we watch a lot of shows where it has like the ancient stuff. And we
Mhm.
talk a lot about how they probably weren't like anything like we thought they were.
Of course.
They probably were so technologically advanced. They could have been kind of like how we are today, but there's something about humanity that makes it want to ruin itself. And like I feel like we are going back digging up stuff and just assuming that they were stupid. Like, oh my gosh, they were hunter gatherers. Like maybe they were like us.
Or they were primitive or somehow. And
Yeah, like maybe we're gonna be looked at as primitive one day. Like once we finish destroying everything, right? They'll come and look at our skyscrapers and they'll be like, what do they call it? The ziggurats that we looked at for Babylonian.
But I also think there's an arrogance of modern scientists and historians to believe that those who came before us somehow knew less than us.
Yes.
And it's like, really? You know, to believe that, you know, this is the height of human technology is so arrogant. You know, to believe that, you know, they it was all primitive. This is like, well, you didn't really, I don't think you really, if you weren't there, you can't, it looks primitive because maybe it's, you don't know how to turn it on. Maybe you don't know where the power button is at. Maybe you don't
like maybe the pyramids do fly. You just ain't figured it out yet.
Maybe you don't figure, maybe you haven't figured out how they actually use it and you going off of your limited understanding, you know. And so it's always interesting, you know, to listen to, again, you know, modern historians and scientists and theorists who, you know, who come up with these ideas of, you know, we're the advanced version of primitive people. And it's like, yeah, but at the same time, I'm sure that they thought that their ancestors were primitive, just like in 1,000 years, those who come after us are going to look at us like we cave people.
I mean, shoot, each generation thinks the one before it was done.
And yeah, exactly. You know, and it's accelerating at an incredible pace.
Yep.
You know, so it's always interesting, you know, it's always the current generation that thinks that they know more than the previous generation. And on some level, on some level, you can say that, but when you are talking about generations, you're talking about generations beyond where there's been a few resets. And to believe that, you know, past this reset that, you know, that they weren't at the height of their technological advances before whatever reset happened, you know. And, you know, but again, a lot of people don't even understand that there's resets that actually happen in history.
Exactly.
And that's how we end up working from square one. And we have people you know, inheriting technology that they don't really know how to use, and they assume that it's primitive.
Because I think we will have another ice age and stone age and bronze age and all that kind of stuff. If we keep tearing this place up, we could torch the sky and make it go ice cold again, you know?
Or a big rock could drop in.
Exactly.
according to, you know, to some historical documents, you know.
And to some other documents, some things fail, some beings fail.
That's a topic for another day.
You know what you ascribe to or subscribe to. Some people want to be it. Some people want to read about it. Anyway.
All right. What is the topic of the night, my love?
Glad you asked. All right. So you're my favorite fighter. Look at you. Look at you. I love you. And I love that about you. For those who are listening to the podcast, he was punching. Doing his little shadow boxing thing he does.
At one point in time, that's all I did was just.
You still do all around the house. Just every time you get a free minute, you could be walking to the fridge and just start shadow boxing.
You gotta stay loose. You gotta be ready. You never know where you gotta throw them hammers. You know.
Yeah.
I gotta be quick because speed is the killer. So I gotta be pop 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 pop. You know. You gotta be ready. You know, so you got to practice.
I respect that. So tonight, we tonight's episode is called Fight Club. And we're talking about, how do you know when something's worth fighting for and when it's time to walk away, right?
Mhm.
Like some things will always be worth fighting for, no matter what. Some things will always be worth fighting for. Like your children, you don't give up on your children, right? Like you might have to figure out a new way to fight, but you don't give up on your children. That's just not something that you give up on. I feel like if you married the right person, you don't give up on that. Now the problem is we pick the wrong people and try to pretend like if we fight hard enough, we'll make them the right people. That's a whole nother show. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's an art to knowing the difference, right? So in a world filled with distractions and uncertainty, it's easy to lose sight of what actually matters. So tonight we're just going to talk about how to keep that flame going within you. And those of you who have read Cormac McCarthy's novel, The Road, the characters talk about having a fire within, right? Having a fire within. And they would ask the little boy would ask people, are you carrying the fire? Because his daddy told him to keep his fire burning within, right? And it's that thing that compels you to go forward, to fight in spite of all adversity, right? Like they were living in a post-apocalyptic world where they saw death and dying and starvation, and they had to boil water just to drink it and just all kinds of stuff like that. And the dad told the boy, like, you'll be fine as long as you keep your fire. And so that's what tonight is about, helping you to, first of all, reminding you that you do have that fire inside you, and helping to ignite your passion and empowering you to fight for what you believe in, whatever that is, right? And so tonight we're going to challenge you and ourselves to stop majoring on the minors and stay focused, okay? We believe that together we can't lose, right? That's why we're in it together with the
Absolutely.
Dunlaps.
And a lot of times, when you talk about that fire, it's it's really about your why.
Yep.
What's your reasons? And a lot of times we fall on sometimes circumstantial reasons. We don't lean into the reasons that propel us forward and keep us going. We have fires in the event of. We have the fire when this happens, then I'll be charged up and ready to go, or I'm charged up only when this happens. And the truth is you have to have a compelling why, a why behind your why. It has to be that fuel that keeps that fire going, that kerosene and the oxygen that just keeps that fire burning and burning and burning.
That's really
and sometimes that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's hard. And when it's and like you said, when things are bleak, a lot of times you have to go back to, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Like, what is my reason? And if you don't have a reason, you need to reassess. Or if your reason is a goal. Goals are great, but they're not a really good why.
That's not it. Yeah.
A goal is a destination.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about destination, it means you stop somewhere. And once you get there, it's like, then what?
And that's why we're never happy when we get there.
Right.
Right? Like you tell yourself, I'll be happy when my kids grow up, or I'll be happy when, when they're babies, you'll be happy when they can start talking so they can tell you what's wrong instead of crying, right? When they start talking and you're like, well, when they're crawling, you'll be like, oh, I'll be happy when they start walking so they can start bumping into everything. Like it's all, you always have these like
circumstances,
self-imposed milestones, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, when this happens, or like, oh, I'll be happy when my hair grow out, or going through, if you're growing locks or something, you'll be like, I'll be happy when I get through this ugly phase, or whatever it is. There's always something. There's always something. I'll be happy when I pay my car off, and then when you pay your car off, like 9 times out of 10, if you're like me, you get another one before you can pay it off. Like there's always something, and we're always putting ourselves, I don't know, it's almost like we don't know how to even be focused unless we get kind of like self-imposed opponent.
Yeah.
Sometimes the opponent is ourselves. Yeah. So like, what do you think about that? Because you're pretty good at discipline. So what do you think about that?
sometimes the best teachers come in the form of opposition.
Okay.
And it's when we get complacent. And that's the danger of comfort. When you're in a comfortable space and you just kind of like just moving along and you don't really, realize what's going on until something shakes you. And you're like, oh, I gotta either move, I either gotta to do something or get off the pot. What do I do here? And sometimes it can be um it can be a bleak situation. And if your why is temporary, if your why is circumstantial, when you face that challenge, you're stuck at that challenge. Now your next why is to get past that challenge, which again is going to be short-lived. And a lot of times, people need a opponent to be invigorated, and they need a mountain to climb. Some people that's just some people are wired like that. Some people are just naturally motivated. Some people just they just want to continuously do whatever they're doing for whatever their why is. But some people don't have that time-tested why. They don't have that why that's about a state of being. They are sequential. I want to get here, I want to get here, I want to get here, I want to get here. And some of us are further, some of us think long term, where they say, okay, I'm going to get this, and after I get this, then I'm going to get this. And that's their why. It's to climb through these sequences, is to go through these steps. This is their steps to fulfillment. Then you have some people who don't know their why until they get there. You'd have some people who don't know their next step until they get stuck and they have to face that opponent. And so the truth is I think comfort and complacency is what makes that challenger arise. Because I think change is the constant in the universe. And when you're complacent, you're not anticipating change. When you're comfortable, you're not anticipating something not being different as it was once before. And so I think that's what provokes the challenger. I think that's what provokes the opposition that gets a lot of people going, because a lot of people don't move unless they have to. And that's just true. We crave stability. We've been conditioned to believe that stability is the goal. And the universe isn't designed that way. The universe isn't designed that way. And you can look at it you can look at it from an economical standpoint. You can look at it from a societal standpoint. You can look at it from any standpoint. There's always a resistance to change. It's because we're comfortable in a certain paradigm. And when that challenger comes to bring new light, a new paradigm, then you have that resistance. And now everybody that was, the people, those who were stuck in one paradigm or another, are now they're standing up and amping up to get ready to fight back what they feel is imposing on them. So I know that was a pretty roundabout way to describe that. But that's my thing, and I think it's in a lot of our nature. And complacency, I think, often brings out the challenger that forces you to shake off complacency or get run over.
And I just think about it from a spiritual context. You're exactly right, because I think that we pray for God to remove the adversities, right? We pray for God to make it smooth sailing. But if it was smooth sailing, you would never pray. Like, you only pray sometimes because life is so hard, you can't handle it on your own. And so, like, even though, we know that God is a loving God and he would rather we do the right thing, human nature is to do the wrong thing, to be honest with you. And so human nature is to forget or take for granted the people who are always there for you. And we know that God is, right? And so if if God didn't allow the adversity, right? And everybody believes in something different. To some people, God is a woman. I have no problem with God being a father because I have a wonderful earthly father. So it doesn't, I have no problem, right? And so for me, just knowing that part of God loving me totally and fully is to allow adversity to stretch me, to grow me, to shape me and mold me into the highest form of myself. Because I wouldn't do it on my own. I'm just saying, I'm just being honest. Like, if left to my own devices, I would not choose to be persecuted. I wouldn't choose to be hurt. I wouldn't choose to have to forgive people. I would choose that nobody would mess with me, you know. But it's only in the adverse times that I become more like him. And so that is really the most loving thing God can do, is to allow adversity to come and shake the nest, right? The eagle shakes the nest. And so I think you're absolutely right about, we need an opponent. We need something. Iron sharpens iron, right? Sandpaper smooths out the rough spaces. And that's how kind of like adversity functions in our lives, I guess.
I was you mentioned something that kind of shook a thought. It reminded me of a conversation I was having with one of my colleagues today, and I was talking about how much I missed fighting, how much I miss competing, not for the sake of violence, but for the sake of learning to be comfortable in discomfort, learning to, getting comfortable being, like you talk about with that opponent, right? And it's when you're under immense pressure is when you're often reminded of your why. Why am I doing this? And if your why isn't compelling enough, you're going to get demolished by that opponent. And I remember, as a young fighter, reminding myself asking myself before every fight during training camp, I'm doing all this work. I'm getting battered and black eyes and busted noses, and I'm, going through all of this stuff to get ready to fight one person. And I would often ask myself, like, when I would be tired and I don't want to train, I just got off work. I've been up since 5 o'clock in the morning. I just, worked a 9-hour shift, and now I got to go train for 4 hours. Why am I doing this? And I remember my why. Like, I'm doing this because I want to be stronger. I'm doing this because this is what I love to do. I'm doing this because this is what makes me who I am. And I'm finding myself in the ring. I'm finding myself every single fight. And I was more interested in finding who I was, finding out who I was at the time than anything else. And that's what propelled me forward, was to see a better version of myself, to see to rise to the occasion and do my best. That was always my goal, to just do, test my limits and do my best. And that's what kept me going. I just want to do my best. I enjoy giving my all to something. And that's why I kept doing it, because this is, and I knew it was making me a better person. I knew it was making me a better, I had learned so much about myself and about life through fighting, that I was addicted to not just the fight, but the what you get after all of that work, what you're left with. Win, lose, or draw, you always gain something.
That's good.
And I love that, I really thrived in that. And so, and I think a lot of people are trained to not like adversity. They think adversity is bad. Adversity is what breaks you, when it's the exact opposite. Or that you
did something, or that adversity came because you messed up, right? Like, if I had just done everything right, then adversity wouldn't have come.
Right. And they think adversity is there to break you, when in actuality, it's not. It's there to build you. It's there to help you face this circumstance so you're better for the next circumstance. Yeah. And there's always a what I'll call a plateau. or you'll get to a level and you'll plateau, and the mistake you make is when you think that this is the way it's going to be. Once you hit that plateau, like, oh yeah, I made it this far. I met this goal. This is how it's going to be. And then that's where complacency sets in until that challenge comes where you have to rise. You have to either step up or you're going to hit that wall. And then it becomes up to you. It's like, okay, why am I doing this again? Why am I here? Why am I facing this challenge? And it's like you said, it's not because you did anything wrong or you failed. It's because you're on a path.
Yeah.
And you have to remember why you chose to walk the path you walked. And so, I think that, I think that that's what compels the fight. That's what it ignites that passion. Remembering what you believe, remembering your belief, remembering what you believe in, what matters to you. And that's what keeps you going. That's what keeps you pushing. That's what builds your discipline to keep doing it. Do what you hate like you love it.
That's good.
Like I heard Mike Tyson say that. That's what he defined as discipline, doing what you hate like you love it.
That's good.
And remaining focused. And that's a tough thing to do.
Yes, it is.
That's a very hard thing to do.
I think I look at education kind of like how you look at fighting. Like, I'm like, when I finish this degree, I'm done. When I achieve this, I'm done. And then I'm always looking for, when I get close to the end of it, I'm like, now what I'm gonna do next? Because I love learning. Like I love teaching because I love being a student. I always want to learn more, grow, academically. I find out new things about myself with each academic challenge I face. And I'm like, most people are like, when I'm done with this, I don't ever want to see school again. And I'm like, what else can I learn? What other degree can I get? Like, maybe I should just reinvent myself and start all over. Like, I think to me, that's what education represents, like how you feel about fighting. And I feel like you feel the same thing about education too, because I watch you grow and I watch you shift and pivot in your professional life. And I watch you challenge yourself and say, I perceive this is what's coming next. And so I'm going to start preparing for it. And you're just, we're always reading books, and we read a book, swap it out sometimes with each other. And I just love growing with you. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this partnership, that we're always challenging each other, because we're both people who like to grow, and being around each other is, to me, that's one of the best things that's ever happened for me.
And you mentioned something about that, inspired a thought. And my why is simple. It's to always be the best me possible. And that's and in my mind, what that tells me is that whatever comes in front of me, I'm going to be the person I need to be to manage this, to overcome this, to deal with this, to make this better. And that's my why. It's not to, and what that allows me to do is whatever circumstance I'm put in, the goal is to be the best version of me, regardless of what's happening around me. And if I'm the best version of me, I can help this situation. I can manage the circumstance. I can work it out and get through on the other side better for it. Because it's it's not the world and me, it's me and the world, and whatever circumstance that's brought to me, because sometimes it's not in my control.
That's it.
And instead of throwing my hands up and saying, I'm like, okay, who do I need to be? What do I need to learn? What do I need to change in order to be the best version of me, to get through this, to make the best of this, to solve this, or to remove this from my path? Or whatever my part is in the situation, and removing it from my path may result in removing it from other people's path. Because being the best version of me allows me to be the best version of me for everybody that's involved.
That's good.
because that's my goal. Because if I'm being the best version of me, then I get to give that best version of me to everybody else that's involved. Because I know it's not just about me, but if I'm the best me that I can be, then I can give my best to the situation and anybody that's involved in it. And that way, everybody benefits to the best of my ability. I did my best. And that's all I want. And so that's how I go into anything, is I want to be the best version of me, regardless of what the situation calls me to be. Because I ain't in control. God is in control. And so I'm always there to pivot when God asks me to pivot. When God need me to be somebody, need me to grow. Okay, I get to studying. I get to looking around. I get to learning. And like you said, when you make it about becoming that best version of yourself, that constant student, that constant learner, because some of the best masters are the best students. Yeah. Because they understand that the path to mastery is learning. There's no to think that you get to a certain point where you stop learning is really short-sighted. And when you're a constant learner, you're a constant grower. And when you're a constant grower, you're ever evolving. And I think, getting back to the main topic, that's what you fight for. Yeah. Is that thing that keeps you going, that thing that fires you up. And that's how you keep moving forward. That's how you step out of the minors and move into the majors. Because you can't be a pro without going through the minors first. But you got to learn everything you need to know in that minor to get to the majors. And with every new level is a new minor.
I love that. And I think, one of what I want to do now was just, talk about some of the strategies you can use to decide whether it's worth fighting for or whether walking away is the best thing to do. And I think people who want to be their very best self, sometimes one of the struggles in that is that we see a challenge as something that we can't overcome. Mm-hmm. Right. So we give it our all because we're like, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to defeat this. It's not going to conquer me. And sometimes it's not even your fight. Like sometimes you have to realize that your talents are best served elsewhere. Right. Yep. And that, yes, that thing will not defeat you because you're supposed to walk away from it, not because you're supposed to just sit there and fight and fight and fight until you pass out.
Right.
When you do that, it means something else that is for you is left waiting on you. That energy that you exhaust in the wrong relationship, that energy that you exhaust in the wrong job is going to tire you out and it's going to delay you. It's not going to just stop you, but it's going to delay you, right? And so the first thing is to assess the significance of the thing, right? So like, is it important in the grand scheme of your life? Is it going to matter 5 years from now? Is it ultimately helping you become the person you want to be? Like, what's the long-term impact this thing is going to have on your happiness, your values, and your goals?
What does it matter?
Does it even matter?
Right. How much does it matter?
Will it matter? Right. And then the next thing, you got to evaluate your motivation. Listen to where I'm guilty. Sometimes I do stuff just to prove people wrong. If you tell me I'm wrong, I'm like, oh, okay. But now I've learned, like, you know what? I might be next. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. The older I get, the more I realize I don't have to prove anything to anybody. Yep. So if I'm not fighting for like a particular cause or goal, or if it's not driven by my personal values or my genuine desire for a positive change, I don't even care. I don't have time to let my ego have me in battles where I don't belong. Mm-hmm. And it took me a long time to figure that out.
And again, it's going back to that 3-letter word, why. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that why can be temporary. Sometimes, you might be dealing with a temporary situation that you have to get through, from, through the duration of that situation. And so again, like you say, sometimes you do it just to be, or sometimes you do it for a more elaborate reason. But evaluating your motivation that's a very good point. Is reassessing your purpose, reassessing why you're doing it, checking yourself.
Yep, check yourself. Yes, before you wreck yourself. Mm-hmm. The third one is to weigh the pros and cons. So we teach kids to do this when they're writing persuasive essays. Make a T-chart, right? Put your pros on one side, put your cons on the other. And you got to know what the potential benefits and drawbacks are. What's your opportunity cost, right? Can I afford to pay this opportunity cost? The Bible talks about who builds a house without first calculating the cost. Like, why would you set out on a trail to do something and you ain't even think about what it's going to cost you financially, what's going to cost you physically, what it's going to take away from the other people you love? Like, you got to consider that thing. And the next thing is to think about the timing and the feasibility. What's the practicality of you actually succeeding, right? Is it the right time? Like, maybe it is the right endeavor, but is it the right time in your life? Is it conducive to success? Would it be more appropriate to wait for a better opportunity? So you got to be realistic about the resources you have available, the support team you have available, and the energy you can allocate to the fight. I could not have made it through my doctoral program without you. This time was the right time for me. I have the right support team. I have the resources. Like, even though it has been, I would say, sometimes challenging, not paying that hasn't been challenging. I have had challenges, but God has provided, and it has been okay, and then the next thing is to seek different perspectives. Always, always, always have open and honest conversations with people you trust. Friends, family, mentors. I talk about everything with you. I have to. Because you're going to be objective. You're always going to tell me what you see, like you're going to cover my blind spots, but you always give me, alternative viewpoints that help me gain clarity. You are my sage. And then trust your intuition. It doesn't lie. Sometimes we ignore our gut and we call it fear or whatever. But sometimes deep down inside, you already know the answer. And again, people like us we want to overcome fear and adversity. Sometimes your gut is telling you don't go that way. And you take it as, I'm not going to be intimidated by that. I'm not going to be afraid. When really your intuition was saying, fool, don't go that way.
And before you move to the next one, I want to go back to where I want to take a step back to the different perspectives. One of the concepts that I've been exploring a lot and really found a lot of truth in, and I've had a lot of gentlemen, a lot of gentlemen, who kind of that are in the seeking space, confirm it. And you cannot be your own counsel.
That's good.
You cannot rely on your own thoughts, because your own thoughts is going to validate what you think.
That's it.
It's a built-in bias. And now, unless you might be one of those people who have trained yourself to challenge your own thoughts. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's probable. There are people who can challenge their own thoughts, who can be their own counsel, but the likelihood is slim to none. And it's always good to get a different perspective, because a picture can never see itself. A picture can never truly critique itself and see where it might need some work. So always seek a different perspective. Seek someone who sees something. Try to see something that you don't see. So I just wanted to kind of, elaborate on that a little bit.
Thank you, babe, because that's important. The next one is consider the long-term consequences.
That's a big one.
So what are the potential regrets or resentment you might feel if you choose not to fight for something that really matters for you? Like, when you give up on something, my dad always says, quitting is contagious.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start to quit and make excuses for yourself, you will always do that.
It's so insidious.
Yes, like sometimes you owe it to yourself just to see how it's going to turn out, right? And I always just think about that when I'm going through something. My dad saying that quitting is contagious. So weigh the impact of letting go against the potential fulfillment of pursuing it. And then the last thing is just to be flexible, right? Recognize that circumstances and priorities going to change over time. Give yourself permission to reassess and reevaluate your choices as you gain new information. So, like, even if you have to change midstream, don't just finish it because you spent a whole bunch of time on it. Like, if you learn something new, then use that new information, reassess, recalibrate, do whatever you got to do. It's okay to adjust your course if it aligns better with your personal growth and well-being, because all these things are ultimately working together for your good, right? Romans 8:28. Yep. And so, like, as you know better, then you do better. Mm-hmm. But I have found myself in relationships, on jobs, all kinds of situations where I felt like, 1 minute now, I devoted so much time and energy, or I, spent so much resources or whatever. But at this stage in my life, get somebody else to do it.
Yep. And that's hard, and that sometimes that's one of the more challenging aspects, is knowing when to change, knowing when to be, when to make a shift. Sometimes, sometimes that's difficult. And sometimes, and letting go is hard too. Change is difficult. We talked about that in the previous show about how difficult changing and readdressing things can be sometimes. So,
but just know, y'all, that it's such a personal thing, and it depends on unique circumstances, your values, and your goals. But like, if you follow those steps, I think it will help you. I think it will help you. Make sure you gather the right information. Take some time to reflect. Like, what do you really want? Who do you really want to be?
And if you haven't, develop your universal why.
Yep. You
got to have a why the why behind all of your whys. You got to have a thought behind I read in the book is it's the thought behind the thought, the sponsoring thought, what kicked off that thought. Why, what is your sponsoring why? What is the why that drives all of your other reasons? And let that be what prepares you forward. That way you can branch off from that one why and make it and almost grow it like a tree. Let that universal why, that sponsoring why, be the root to all your causes. And move from that.
I love that. It reminds me of there's something that we do with like research, right? Where you have a lot of different types of methodology you can use. You have a lot of different things that you care about, but you have to determine like, what's your wheelhouse? What are you going to specialize in? Or like, what are some methodologies that you're going to specialize in? Because you could be a jack of all trades and a master of none kind of thing. And so you have to know like, okay, when these opportunities arise, yes, I can do all these things, but like, what is my particular wheelhouse as a researcher? I got about 5 things that I'm willing to focus on, right? And if anything comes up for the opportunity to write or speak on those 5 things, then I'm your girl. Right. But if it's outside, then I know to bounce it to other people. I can still participate in it, but that's not my 5 things. That's not my why. Right. And all of that must center around whatever that one universal thing is that I always want to focus on. And so I think I love that. I really do. You want to close this out, babe?
Well, yeah, I'll go ahead and close us out. I think that was a great way to wrap it up. We hope y'all enjoyed this episode of In It with the Dunlaps. We work pretty diligently to come up with content with y'all to expand some minds and enrich some spirits and hopefully educate some people and maybe a little bit of entertainment, some edutainment. Help you get through your Tuesday night. Where tomorrow's hump day, so this the hump to your hump day. So we hope y'all we hope y'all enjoy this episode. We want y'all to keep tuning in as we continue to evolve this thing and get better and better, because again, our why is to make this thing better and better. Is to educate and entertain and bring, make some people smile and lift some spirits and give you what you need on some level.
You make me smile.
I try. You made me smile too.
Thank you.
But thank y'all for tuning in. This has been another episode of In It with the Dunlaps. I am your co-host, Deante.
I'm Shekema.
And we are the Dunlaps. Thank y'all for tuning in. We will be back again, same black time, same black channel. Facebook Live, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live. You can catch us on Spotify, wherever else you do your streaming pleasure. We'll be there in whatever measure. And we'll see y'all there.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.